The Ukrainians are claiming that they are basically slaughtering the Russian tactical aviation, while Putin claims, or while there are claims that Putin is willing to sign a ceasefire. At the same time, the Russian military leadership, especially the Ministry of Defense, is seeing some cleansing of its personnel. More and more are getting arrested, and it seems to be just the beginning of it all, while at the same time unclear situation about international aid, about Chinese aid, lethal aid towards Russia, where there are even claims now that some officials are actually lying about this. We'll talk about this as well as about the developments along the front line in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Hello and welcome. Both sides keep striking the rear areas Ukraine has struck with drones in Tatarstan, so far away from the front line, while the Russians once again strike Ukraine with drones, with cruise missiles. Nothing in these were so extraordinary that we need to waste time on this. In the north, the front line seems to be increasingly stabilizing. We have reports, though, that both sides bring in reinforcements in the basically along the border of Sumy and Chernihiv. So both reports of Ukrainian reinforcements arriving here, as well as about additional Russian troops arriving here. But as of now, I do not see any sign that somebody has crossed the border. It seems to be stable. In the area here, where the Russians have entered Ukrainian territory, the front line seems to have mostly been stabilized. Now, there are some indications of additional advances of the Russian in Vovchansk, north of the river, but very small ones, and there still seems to be Ukrainian presence, but the front line has mostly stabilized. There are here and there some claims of 100 meter, 400 meters and change, but every geolocalization that I saw is not different from the situation I've presented to you in the last situation report. So we'll switch over directly to the Eastern Frontier. And here we do have some changes. First, the Russians have entered Berestove, which is down here. We have geolocalizations in this regard here at the western part of Berestove and in the eastern part. So we know the Russians have now entered Berestove here, and we see them further south, also having a small advance south of Novoselivske. This is a geolocalization here that right east of Stelmachivka, they have advanced along the tree line here. This should be, I think, this tree line here. Let me quickly recheck. The last one that is reaching this, it should be the, wait. No, I think it was here, slightly here. So nevertheless, nevertheless, I paused to find it, so they have advanced until here. Somewhat in the gray area, they advanced somewhat in the tree line here. No big overall change at all. And before we switch further south to the Siversky Donetsk, to everyone who participated, thank you for your help. An additional off-road vehicle was delivered to Ukraine to allow the evacuation of seriously injured humans, people that will thus be brought to ambulances to save lives. With my donation campaign so far, I've raised, I think, money for 9 of them, which should all be in Ukraine by now. But let's switch back to the southern side of the Siversky Donetsk. Here at Bilohorivka, we actually have a Ukrainian advance north of it. Just to, at the same time, we obviously heard the Russians claiming that they captured Bilohorivka, while now we see the Ukrainians up here. This should be up roughly here. So Ukrainian positions in the north of Bilohorivka, but at the same time we do have a Russian advance close to Spirne. Here we have the advance. Wait, let me quickly check here. Here it is. We have an advance, and it's to the west of Spirne. When we see the tree line here, it is here along this area. They have advanced till here. So no big change here, but some advance that we can observe. And the next advance, the next change in territory is in Chasiv Yar. And here we have the Ukrainians actually doing successful counterattacks. In the northeast, we have them in both these positions. So we see the Ukrainians now being here again, fresh positions where they pushed the Russians back a few houses. So no big change here. The Russians still have the initiative, but we see them showing some advances here. In the area of Klishivka, I have no change. Like from the latest information, Klishivka should have fallen by now. The maps, most pro-Ukrainian maps, now show the majority of the town under Russian control. I showed you in the last time that we had a geolocalization of them here raising the flag, but them operating in the south here as well. But I said no fresh changes there for us to record. Further south at the area of Avdiivka, we do have some changes in the area south here of Umanske. Now this area is now under full control, but we have a geolocalization as well of the Russians being completely in Umanske, where they even had an ammo dump. Now, unless that was a Ukrainian ammo dump that they destroyed after losing it, it would show that the Russians have full control over Umanske. So at this moment, it's probably the fact that Umanske has fallen to the Russians as well. Further south at Marinka, in the direction of Marinka, we have some change in Krasnohorivka. We have a geolocalization of this area now being under Russian control. No big change here in territory. The front line there seems to be moving very slowly as well. Further south of Novomikhailivka, we have a slight development southwest of it, and that is at this point here. No, excuse me, here. This is, as you can see, it's basically directly off Konstantinivka already. So the front line, the fresh positions of the Russians here, we can see that hook here. And that's here. So the Russians have advanced roughly until this point. Further south, no change that I can record. And we have some changes in Staromayorsk. Now the Russians, it's unclear whether they actually managed to take it, but we see them advancing into the center of Staromayorsk. The interesting part is they do this with motorcycles. There are even videos of them training it. So this is a training exercise where you see them driving and training to disembark and then storm fortifications. Interesting part is that they put out that they properly park the motorcycle. That might take too much time in a serious event, but as you can see, I guess it's still in training. So the Russians seem to increasingly use motorcycles, and Riba is writing that this is the reason for that is that they are scattered and are harder to hit by artillery, and the speed of motorcycles allows you to more effectively evade attacks from FPV drones. As said, like if it works, I guess it works. In the end, speed is some kind of protection as well. And if with the motorcycles they are fast enough, that might lead to some success. From Krinky, the situation is unclear. First of all, south of Orikhiv, no fresh changes. Actually, some Ukrainian claims that they still control the whole town. I think that's nonsense. From every geolocalization I've seen, the Russians should be in full control of the town now, but we'll see over the coming days if we get more information from that. And from the Dnipro, the situation is somewhat unclear. Both sides, from the Russian as well as Ukrainians, are claiming that Krinky is being evacuated. So the Ukrainians are finally withdrawing from here. I don't have the final confirmation though, and some things is that they deploy to another part of the left bank of the Dnipro, so somewhere else here, but not back to their own side of the river. So yeah, we'll have to observe how it's going to develop. Now we have some information from the or some claims that are being done by the Russians. We have here the claim by a Ukrainian soldier that an 8th Sukhoi 25 was shot down. This is being spread around that Ukraine now shot down 8 Sukhoi 25 ground attack planes within just 20 days. So basically 3 weeks, 8 of them being shot down. I looked for it and I don't really find proof. Now this is the best proof that we can see. We see a manpad being launched at something that is marked here. I don't even see what is being marked there. Like I can't identify anything there. And then we would say, if they're already filming, why don't they show us the hit and how the plane goes down? And the other thing is this here, and there we just see some smoke on the horizon. I don't see any proof of this either. So the 8 planes might have been shot down. They might not be shot down. It's like the Sukhoi 34, where supposedly they shot down one per day for a couple of days. It's likely that they had some success there, but whether the numbers are accurate, no way from me to confirm that. Ukraine is continuing attack and strike, though, on the eastern part of the occupied territory as well as on the Crimean Peninsula. And there the damage is adding up. The Russians are increasingly suffering additional losses. At the same time, the Ukrainians also struck a surveillance radar, as we can see here. It was hit and damaged. Now, this is one of Russia's most modern over-the-horizon radars, and that could cause some problems, actually. Because while the range is 6,000 kilometers and it's bouncing the radiation back, so it can look actually over the horizon and help the Russians to see, for instance, ballistic missiles being fired at the Crimean Peninsula. At the same time, this is one of the systems the Russians use to identify ballistic missile launches against them. Basically, it's part of their preparation to prevent nuclear strikes against them. And this is then we need to talk about the doctrine of mutual assured destruction, which basically says that as long as both sides are sure that they will not survive a nuclear war, the most reasonable outcome is not to use nuclear weapons as well, and striking early warning systems, reducing Russia's ability to see nuclear attacks coming is obviously not a great thing. Now, this should not be misunderstood that the Russians will thus strike soon with nuclear weapons. The basic principle why it's important that your enemy even has good knowledge of your own nuclear weapons, that you allow him to know whether he's going to be struck or not, that this is de-escalating is well known. As said, if I don't want to waste too much time here, if you're interested in this, just read Google mutual assured destruction and you'll find it. This will not diminish it. This will not destroy it, but it's a strike against the reconnaissance platforms. And while there is surely some military benefit among it as well, and there are claims that this is also working for electronic warfare. It might be able to diminish the effectiveness of Starlink. It might protect GLONASS. Don't ask me how. So while Ukraine will likely have a military benefit, at the same time, I can guarantee you that the US is probably not too happy about targets like this being struck, as the more Russia's sensors are being diminished, the sensors that protect them from nuclear strikes, the higher the risk gets. As said, this doesn't mean we are in front. We have to expect nuclear war anytime soon, but this is something that is not going to make the US happy. And at the same time, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is advocating to allow the Ukrainians to strike Russia inside of Russia with US weapons. And so far, this is still Biden and the National Security Advisor's decision to block that. This might change in the future. We had the Speaker of the House, Johnson, for instance, also saying that he believes Ukraine should be able to strike it, but strikes like this could thus cause some problems. Strike like against the radar system could thus be an argument to prevent Ukrainians using this, so this could be some kind of issue. At the same time, Poland is negotiating, is thinking about it. Is thinking about protecting some of its border areas, the air, basically. They think about using their air defense to protect some areas inside of Ukraine. The justification will likely be that several times weapons from Russia have already violated Poland's defense, Poland's territorial integrity, and with this they'll be able to prevent it. And Ukraine has asked Poland about this, and the Poles so far have not said no. They are currently consulting whether or not they are going to do this. And the bigger news, I think, from yesterday was that Putin supposedly is willing to do a ceasefire, to sign a ceasefire. Now, obviously, it has to accept the reality on the ground, so he's not going to withdraw, but we have to at least put some effort into this. This is likely part. We can only, or I can only find two main reasons for him to say that right now. Either it's part of an informational warfare because Ukraine's peace summit is going to come soon, and there he can basically say that he wanted to make peace, but Ukraine didn't. And at the same time, we have to say, if it's honest, if Russia wants to sign a ceasefire, the only reason for Russia is that it sees a big benefit in regards to signing a ceasefire, in contrast to keep fighting on. This means that the situation after a ceasefire is better for Russia than it is right now. Now, what's the reason for that be? I can just speculate. It could be economical issues, that the Russian government knows that they are going to have bigger problems in the future, and by freezing the front line, they can restabilize. It could be military problems, that the depots are getting empty. There are calculations that in a year from now is the shortest period. Other calculations are further in the future, but basically in a year from now, according to the most optimistic calculations, the Russians will run out with the first weapon systems, where their depots are empty, and all they will have from then on are freshly produced ones. So this could be another reason, and obviously another option might be that he believes in a ceasefire, the Western aid for Ukraine will diminish while Russia will keep producing, so the balance of power will shift further, or will shift significantly to the Russian side. I cannot tell you which one of those it is. I'm not a Russia expert, and everything we heard in the past from the claims that the Russians are running out of missiles, that their defense industry is falling apart because of the sanctions. For instance, 3 months into the war, something like this, it was reported that Uralvagonzavod stopped producing because of lack of parts. Well, they have at the very least resumed production. So I don't feel competent to tell you which one of the reasons it is, but we need to be aware that Russia has not achieved its strategic goals as of now. It has not subjugated Ukraine, made sure that Ukraine's territory and resources will be available for Russia. So it's unfinished business. For Russia to stop this now, the only reasons are that they think this will improve their situation. The only other option, and this would probably something that the West should aim for, is that they would believe Ukraine will get so strong that in the future they might be pushed back. So better to freeze it now before they start losing some territory. And this should obviously be a Western goal to allow Ukraine to reach in this position. But as said, until Russia either has given up its strategic goals or has achieved it, a permanent peace is out of the question. Russia would only use the ceasefire now to rearm, to prepare, and then wait for the right moment to strike again. This would be unfinished business for both sides, actually. So a ceasefire would just be that. It would just cease fire for some time, basically a breather for either side, where Russia believes, as they are proposing the ceasefire, Russia would believe that the breather for them would be bigger than for Ukraine. In partisan and sabotage area, we have news from the Norwegian intelligence agency. They are saying that the risk is rising of Russian sabotage against the defense industry. We have a ton of rumors in the past, explosions, fires, etc., that could be that are at least suspicious. Not in all cases. Some were exaggerated, but it's an obvious risk that the Russians might hinder Western industry to aid Ukraine, as this would help their own war effort. In troop generation for Ukraine, we have some news. Ukraine is regrouping. 25% of all positions in the general staff are being struck. They are being deleted, and 35% are being moved into other areas. So basically the general staff is being reduced by 60%. The personnel in regards to that will be, some of it at least, be sent to combat units, and which might allow for some rotation. And if they do this in the general staff, it might be reasonable to assume that they might do this among their combat units as well. As we heard, some of them were basically destroyed down to 30% personnel strength. Unless they manage to fill them up with the mobilization now, it might make sense to basically delete those units and spread the personnel somewhere else, as they don't need the staff for a unit if the unit doesn't have combat power. We'll have to see, but we see Ukraine acting on their current situation and progressing. In politics, we have some interesting, in political sphere, we have some interesting thing. Now we have Great Britain saying China is giving China is giving Russia weapons. This would obviously be a massive escalation. It would mean that the Western deterrence has completely failed. And at the same time, the US questions it. Jake Sullivan says he has not seen intelligence showing collaboration on combat equipment. Now, we need to say that this is obviously a highly political topic, what I'm going to say now. And I know that like 35% of my viewers are from the US, of which probably a fair amount is going to plan to vote for US President Biden. I don't have a stake in this election, even though everyone has a stake because the US is the most important and most powerful country in the world. But I'm sorry if this is getting a slightly bit political now. Now, Jake Sullivan is being accused to be the main reason why the aid for Ukraine has been limited. We talked about it in the past. Weapons that were available not being delivered, but delivered only after another catastrophe that Ukraine suffered, where that weapon was no longer useful. The biggest example would be the ATACMS with cluster munitions. The US had them decommissioned. They were ready to be delivered, but they didn't give it to Ukraine when their counteroffensive was started. So the Russian Kamov 52 combat helicopters managed to slaughter the Ukrainian armored columns. 4 months later, the US delivered those ATACMS, and the missiles were used to strike the airfields, taking out, I think, over 20 of those Kamov helicopters. So that was completely unnecessary to wait there, unless, of course, you have political gains, goals, fears, etc. It was a political decision not to deliver at that point. And most of this is not being said. I mean, that's Biden's decision, but the responsibility for those is usually being attributed to Jake Sullivan. And at least among those who support Ukraine, usually Jake Sullivan is basically the culprit they accuse of everyone. Now, if we put it in this context, if we take Jake Sullivan as being responsible to hold back aid for Ukraine that could be delivered, just think about Lend-Lease that could have been used. If we take it, then we need to think, why would he say that the US don't have intelligence after the British Minister of Defense says he has intelligence and the US has as well? Now, is it like either maybe the British Minister of Defense is lying? Possible. Or Jake Sullivan didn't see anything because maybe he didn't want to see something, but we need to say at least speculate about one thing. Should it be true that China has delivered lethal aid to Russia, then sanctions would be required. Otherwise, every deterrence would be gone. If China is able to give to Russia artillery, weapons, guns, tanks, whatever, if they are able to deliver them, whatever they want, then without any repercussions, it would be an absolute disaster. So from the US side, it would be mandatory to respond to that. But if it's done, the economic reasons, the economic downpour will be significant and it will be painful. And this several months, what is it? We have May now, election is in November. That's half a year before the US election. This would be felt in the US economy if the US were to sanction China in a way like it sanctioned Belarus, for instance. If the same sanctions hit, it would cost probably millions, several million jobs in the US, and would thus guarantee the election of Trump into the next presidency. So from a member of the Biden administration, it would make perfect sense to simply ignore that weapons are being delivered, as long as it's not so many that they are not allowed to ignore it anymore. And thus it would make sense to say that. I've seen accusations that Jake Sullivan is lying here. I have no clue. It might be true that the British are wrong, that the British interpret something wrong. It's unclear about this at this point, but at least it might be a theoretical possibility that Jake Sullivan is thus trying to make sure that the election campaign is going well. And we've talked about this in the past. Unfortunately, that's part of the reality that both sides, both political sides in the US, decide not necessarily to their own best interest and not necessarily to their country's best interest, both sides. We've seen both sides do that because they want to win the election. Regardless, that could be a reason for that, but I think I've annoyed the supporters of Joe Biden enough. So let's continue to another point. Russia has started to remove buoys in the river Narva along with Estonia here. Now, they removed only some, I think 20 out of 55, and it's a little less dramatic than it was initially said, because the agreement between Estonia and Russia to put those buoys is only 2 years old, and the Russians disagreed with where the Estonians put those buoys just a few months ago. So this is not something, them removing something that's there for a decade or two. That's a fresh development where the Russians immediately said, we don't think that's right, and they remove it, but still it's obviously some political side. At the same time, we need to also talk about what Putin, his supporters, the pro-Russia faction is saying, that Zelensky is no longer legitimate, as his his presidency has expired with the May 20th, and as he hasn't had a new election. Now, this is clearly in the constitution that in times of war, there's a possibility of elections not being possible. The question would also be, how are they supposed to do elections with soldiers along the front line, with polling booths directly behind the front line, with the Russians striking the rear area, with them not being able to allow Ukrainians in the occupied territories to elect. And as a German, I can just say it's in the German constitution as well. If Germany is at war, there are no elections. So the German government will stay in power even if their regular period has expired. They will do the same. And I bet Germany and Ukraine aren't the only ones. So while that's unpleasant, while that surely could be better, while it surely would be better for the Ukrainians to have a fresh presidential elections, while it would probably be better if Zelensky would have been re-elected, which I think was likely, but if he had been re-elected, it's nothing that diminishes his legitimacy. At the same time, legitimacy issues are in Russia, because Russia is starting to clean up its military leadership. The deputy chief of the general staff and head of its main communication directorate, Lieutenant General Vadim Sharman, was arrested, as well as the Ministry of Defense's head of governmental procurement, Vladimir Vetelensky. Both of them were arrested, and this seems to be just the beginning. We already talked about some in the past, and the Moscow Times is reporting, according to insiders, a big cleanup is planned with hundreds of people that could be arrested. Now, the reasons for that, I'm no Russia expert. I can't tell you. I can tell you that probably the new Minister of Defense, Belousov, might be more efficient. He might be a good choice for procurement, but whether this is to actually fight corruption or something else is a different question. Anders Puk-Nielsen made an entry about this, and Vlad Wexler made videos about this too. I think both of them are far more qualified than me to talk about the interior politics inside of Russia. Basically, it's split between either anti-corruption effort or solidifying control of the government, basically to prevent a coup d'etat. The speculation would be, a little bit speculation from my side, Shoigu was leading the Ministry of Defense for a long time. He should have his cronies in the important positions. He was removed from the Ministry of Defense to another important position as the head of the Security Council. This means that he has no reason to start a coup when he gets that job change, because he's still going to be a very, very important person. But at the same time, now everyone is getting sacked who is close to Shoigu. So Shoigu's ability to do a coup will be gone fairly soon as well. This could be a reason for this. It could purely be against corruption. We've seen in China that this doesn't exclude itself. You can work against corruption by arresting people who might be a political problem for you and leave the other corrupt ones in the place, especially in a system that is inherently as corrupt as the Russians or the Chinese are. But as said, this is not my area of expertise. I would advise you to watch Anders Puk-Nielsen and Vlad Wexler about this. They are far more knowledgeable than me. And in international aid, we have an additional US aid package, 275 million with HIMARS 155 and 105 munition, anti-tank munitions, be it handheld, be it fired, TOW missiles, precision bombs, and mines and more. Precision bombs is quite interesting because I think I have it here. Yep. The GBU-39 small diameter bomb has appeared either on MiG-29 or on Sukhoi 27. The interesting part is they are fairly cheap to produce, supposedly $30,000 to $40,000. There are a lot of them on stock. by the US and the Allies, so Ukraine should be able to get a lot of them. The theoretical range is even 100 kilometers, but here we need to emphasize theoretical range, as this would require them to fly high and fast, which would obviously put the Ukrainian jets into danger of long-range air defense and of long-range air-to-air missiles from the Russian combat air patrol. Still, though, it would mean that the Ukrainians can probably strike targets close to the front line from a safe distance, be it the full 100 kilometers inside, or be it flying lower than tens of kilometers. And at the same time, the bombs are extremely accurate, and they carry 23 kilograms of explosives, so enough to do serious damage in precision strikes. In fresh aid from Germany has arrived. Iris-T, another air defense system, and 10 Leopard 1s have arrived in Ukraine. And we have news from France, according to which Ukrainian pilots are being trained in Alpha jets in France. And it seems that's actually basic pilot training. So the Ukrainians are training fresh pilots to become future combat pilots, something that's obviously needed in the context of the war. And now the first time that I seem to have proof of this. I talked about it in the past, that it would make sense a lot, and it's necessary for the Ukrainians to do this too, especially in a war that is expected to last for quite a long time. And now we see that the Ukrainians do that. And finally, we have a video here of another Ukrainian developments, an unmanned ground vehicle with a machine gun on top. So we see developments in this regard as well that are continuing here. So developments along both sides is continuing as well. That was it from me for now. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't be too mad if you are a Democrat and I was a little mean to Jake Sullivan. I hope I didn't annoy you too much. I said I think both sides deserve a lot of blame here, unfortunately, but I said even more. While I sound like I bash the US, I'm bashing Europe, especially Germany, even more, because if we are honest, this is a European war, so Europe should put a much bigger emphasis on it than the US, simply out of own interest. Regardless, though, if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section, and I almost forgot it. Let me pause it real quick. Okay, I forgot about it, so let me do it full screen again. Some of you have been extremely generous after you found out that I have an Amazon wish list. I got a metric arse ton of books. I have The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia from Masha Geeson. That was given to me by Yoda5. Enjoy your gift. I was at the Fulda Gap in the 1980s. I appreciate your professionalism. Good briefing style. I've read this also. It's a quick read. Thank you very much, Yoda5. Thank you very much for your generosity. I got from Michael Williams, I got War in Ukraine, Volume 3, Armed Formations of the Luhansk People's Republic. I got Volume 4, Main Battle Tanks of Russia and Ukraine, Soviet Legacy and Post-Russian MBTs. I got Volume 5, Main Battle Tanks of Russia and Ukraine 2014 to 23. And I got Volume 2, Russia Invasion February 2022, all from the War in Ukraine series, and everything is from Michael Williams. Thank you very much, Michael, for your generosity. I don't know why you weren't able to send me Volume 1. I think somebody else might have already bought it. I'm not completely sure. I don't find it in the list anymore, even though I haven't received it yet. Regardless, thank you so much for your generosity and providing me with something to read. And from Pierre Lamy, I got Strategy, The Logic of War and Peace from Edward Lutwerk. Thank you very much for that book. And I got from Ron Brown, Rockets and Missiles Over Ukraine, The Changing Face of Battle from Mihailovich. Thank you so much as well. And I got, or is that from a German? Yep, that's from a German, but here we have from an English, from an anonymous English viewer, I will show you how it was, the story of wartime Kiev from Ilya Ponomarenko. Thank you so much to all of you for your generosity. I really appreciate it. When I left Germany, when I emigrated, the most painful thing for me was to give up my library of, I think, 4,000 books that I have had accumulated in the last 15 years, mostly about military history and military, and I wasn't able to take it abroad with me, and that my viewers helped me to rebuild it is heartwarming and is beautiful. So thank you so much. I might not have time to find, I might not have the time soon to read all of it, but I will at some point. And if I ever make a video about it, I'll remember that to mention the donors, basically maybe in the intro, maybe in the outro, that you participated in allowing me to do this video. Thank you so much. If you want to also send me books, Amazon wishlist is in the description. Thank you very much. Also, if you want to support the channel in other ways, this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. Thank you so much for all your appreciation, for all your help. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.